To anyone else, the M4 Sherman tank was a tombstone of rust, a forgotten metal corpse surrendering to the Virginia woods. For Elias Vance, it was a mirror. He stood before it, the humid air thick with the scent of decay and honeysuckle, and saw his own reflection in its corroded hull. A man abandoned by purpose, hollowed out by a war that had followed him home. His German shepherd, Ranger, whined low in his throat, a sound of profound distress that vibrated through the quiet clearing. The dog ignored the squirrels chattering in the oaks and the scent of deer on the morning breeze, his entire being focused on a single, insignificant-looking spot on the tank's armored plating. For weeks, this had been his ritual, a frantic, obsessive pawing at a welded-on maintenance box that hadn't been opened since the Truman administration. Elias saw only rust, but the dog sensed the impossible. A secret worth millions, a deadly truth wrapped in steel, a final, whispered message from the brother whose loss had broken the world. If you believe that the deepest wounds can be healed and that loyalty can light the way through the darkest of nights, please consider supporting us by subscribing to our channel. We are honored to share these stories with you, and we'd love to know where you're listening from today. So please take a moment to leave a comment below. The silence in the small, inherited farmhouse was a physical weight. It pressed down on Elias, filling the spaces between the floorboards and the dust motes dancing in the slivers of sunlight. His only companion was the amber glow of bourbon in a glass and the ghost of his younger brother, Marcus. The ghost was always there, frozen at 21, forever smiling from the creased photograph on the mantelpiece. That smile was a constant, searing accusation. You were there. You were his big brother. You were supposed to bring him home. He raised the glass, the familiar burn a welcome punishment. Before it reached his lips, a wet nose pressed firmly against his hand, pushing it away. Ranger stared up at him, his amber eyes holding no judgment, only a deep, unwavering certainty. The dog nudged the glass again, then turned and trotted to the door, looking back over his shoulder. The message was clear. Not this, that, out there, the tank. With a sigh that felt like it was dredged from the bottom of his soul, Elias set the glass down. He followed the dog out into the clinging humidity, surrendering to the one mission he had left. The work was penance. He started with wire brushes, scraping away 60 years of neglect. Rust flaked off like dried blood, revealing the pockmarks of a long-forgotten conflict. Sweat dripped from his brow, stinging his eyes, but the rhythmic, mindless labor was a balm. It was a language his body understood, a process of breaking something down to its essential parts, the same way the Rangers had taught him to break down a rifle. Each day, Ranger sat watch, a silent, furry supervisor, occasionally whining and nudging his head toward the stubborn maintenance box near the right tread. Elias had ignored it at first, focusing on the larger task of freeing the seized turret and clearing the debris-choked interior. But the dog's persistence was absolute. Finally, giving in, Elias took a crowbar and a heavy mallet to the welded seam. The metal groaned in protest, the sound echoing through the trees. With a final, percussive crack, the lid broke free. It wasn't empty. Nestled inside a decaying canvas sat a metal tin, and inside the tin, wrapped in oilcloth, was a leather-bound journal. Its pages were filled with the elegant, looping cursive of a man from another generation. The journal belonged to a Corporal James Corrigan, a tanker in the Korean War. His entries painted a vivid, harrowing picture of mud, cold, and fear. But woven between the accounts of battle were strange, cryptic passages, strings of numbers and seemingly random words. Elias's heart beat a little faster. It was a field cipher, an old but effective variant of the kind he had learned in training. For 3 days he sat at his kitchen table, the journal open, a pen and pad beside him. He wasn't just a broken man in a quiet farmhouse anymore. He was a cryptographer, a soldier on a mission. The code slowly gave up its secrets, telling a story that Corrigan dared not write plainly. His unit had been tasked with recovering a cache of gold bars, requisitioned by the North Koreans from a local bank. They had succeeded, but Corrigan had learned that his own commanding officer was corrupt, planning to steal the gold for himself. In a desperate act of defiance, Corrigan had hidden the bars, not in some distant location, but somewhere inside the tank itself. He had created the cipher as a map, a key for someone trustworthy to find. The last entry was dated the day before his unit was overrun. James Corrigan never made it home. Elias closed the journal, a profound sense of duty settling over him. He wasn't just fixing a tank anymore. He was finishing a fallen soldier's last mission. The restoration became a resurrection. As Elias worked, sanding down the pitted steel of the interior and rewiring the ancient instrument panels, he felt pieces of himself clicking back into place. The familiar smell of grease and metal chased away the scent of stale bourbon. He learned every bolt, every weld, every secret of the machine. It was an intimate conversation without words. The tank was a survivor just like him. It wore its scars openly, but its heart, the massive Continental engine, was still strong. He needed parts, rare components he couldn't salvage. The necessity forced him out of his self-imposed exile and into the nearby town of Harmony Creek. The trip felt like a foray into enemy territory. People stared at the quiet, imposing man buying odd gaskets and vintage wiring. But at the hardware store, a woman with kind eyes and work-worn hands named Sarah recognized the look in his eyes. Her husband had been a Marine. She didn't ask questions, just helped him find what he needed, offering a small, genuine smile that felt like a lifeline. This brief contact, this crack in his isolation, was terrifying and, to his surprise, deeply healing. But it also made him visible. In a town this small, a stranger restoring a tank was news, and news traveled. One afternoon, the crunch of expensive tires on his gravel driveway broke the familiar rhythm of his work. A gleaming black sedan, impossibly clean against the rustic backdrop, rolled to a stop. A man in a tailored suit, Silas Thorne, stepped out, his polished shoes looking obscene on the dusty ground. He moved with an easy, predatory grace, his smile a well-rehearsed instrument of disarming charm. "Elias Vance?" he asked, extending a hand. "My name is Silas Thorne. I'm a historian and a collector. I heard a rumor about an old warhorse out here, and I had to see for myself." Ranger, who had been dozing in a patch of sun, rose to his feet, a low, guttural growl rumbling in his chest. Thorne's eyes flickered toward the dog, his smile tightening almost imperceptibly. He walked around the Sherman, his gaze sharp and appraising, far more intense than that of a casual historian. "Remarkable," he murmured. "A true piece of history. I'll be direct. I am prepared to offer you $250,000 for it, as it sits. Take it off your hands, save you the trouble." The offer was staggering, enough to change everything. But Elias looked from Thorne's empty eyes to the tank, his tank, and then to the journal sitting on his workbench. "She's not for sale," he said, his voice flat. Thorne's smile vanished. "Mr. Vance, don't let sentimentality cloud your judgment. It's $250,000 for a pile of scrap metal." The thinly veiled insult hardened Elias's resolve. "I said, she's not for sale." Thorne held his gaze for a long moment before nodding slowly. "A pity," he said, turning back to his car. "A real pity." The night was shattered by Ranger's explosive barking. Elias was out of bed in an instant, his senses on high alert, the instincts of a dozen night operations roaring back to life. He moved silently through the house, grabbing the heavy iron fireplace poker. Outside, the moon was hidden by clouds, casting the property in deep shadow. He found the cut fence line first, then the jimmied lock on his workshop. Tools were scattered, his workbench overturned. It wasn't a robbery. It was a violation, a message. And then he saw it. Pinned to the tank's hull by a hunting knife was a single, crisp business card. Silas Thorne. On the back, 2 words were scrawled in an aggressive hand. "Last offer." The illusion of a polite collector was gone. This was a threat. The quiet solitude of his sanctuary had been breached. Elias felt a cold fury he hadn't experienced since his last tour. He was no longer just a man fixing a tank. He was a soldier defending his ground. He spent the rest of the night and the following day turning his home into a fortress. He used his training to set up a perimeter of tripwires connected to simple, loud alarms. He camouflaged positions in the woods. He wasn't just waiting for Thorn to come back. He was preparing a welcome. The threat galvanized him. He had to find what Thorn was truly after. He returned to Corrigan's journal, rereading the final, deciphered entry. Beneath the voice of the world, my last testament lies. The voice of the world, Elias whispered, his eyes landing on the space where the tank's long-range radio had once sat. He'd already cleared the area, but he hadn't thought to look beneath it. Using a pry bar, he worked at the edges of the heavy floor plate. It came loose with a metallic shriek. Underneath was not gold, but a soldier's steel footlocker. He lifted it out, his hands trembling slightly as he opened the lid. It was filled with documents, a small reel of film, and a set of dog tags belonging to Corporal James Corrigan. The documents were a meticulous record of Thorn's corruption even as a young officer in Korea, witness statements, shipping manifests for black market weapons, all leading to the ambush that killed Corrigan and his crew. Thorn hadn't just wanted the gold. He needed to bury his original sin. But as Elias sifted through the yellowed pages, a newer, more modern file slipped out from the bottom. It was a preliminary field report from a Pentagon whistleblower, detailing catastrophic failures in body armor provided by a contractor. The contractor was Thorn Defense Industries. The report cited a specific firefight in Afghanistan where the ceramic plates had shattered like glass under enemy fire. Elias's blood ran cold as he read the date and grid coordinates. It was the day Marcus died. The world tilted. The air punched from his lungs. Thorn's greed hadn't just killed a soldier 70 years ago. It had reached across time and put a bullet through his brother's heart. This was never about gold. It was about justice. The choice was simple. There was no choice at all. He could take the evidence to the authorities, but men like Thorn had lawyers and connections. They buried things. They buried men. No, this had to end here on his terms, on the ground he had reclaimed from his own despair. He wouldn't run. He would fight. He spent the next 48 hours in a blur of focused, disciplined action. He worked on the Sherman's engine, coaxing it back to life with a combination of scavenged parts and sheer willpower. Finally, with a plume of black smoke and a deafening roar, the old Continental engine coughed, sputtered, and caught. The sound was a primal growl of defiance. He reconnected the manual traverse for the turret, the heavy gears groaning as the massive 76mm cannon swung slowly from side to side. He rigged the tank's single remaining spotlight to a car battery. The property was no longer a refuge. It was a kill box. The restored tank, the symbol of his healing, was now the instrument of his righteous anger. He placed the evidence box, the proof of Thorn's sins, in the center of a clearing, a piece of bait Thorn would be unable to resist. He sat in the commander's hatch, the cold steel a comfort, and waited for the war to come to him. Thorn didn't keep him waiting long. 2 sets of headlights cut through the darkness, stopping just short of the tree line. The power to the house abruptly died. 3 figures, dressed in black and armed with suppressed rifles, moved out of the woods with professional efficiency. Elias watched them through a pair of old binoculars, his heart a steady, cold drum. They moved exactly as he predicted, sweeping toward the workshop first. He let them get close before triggering the first alarm, a series of empty cans that crashed to the ground, sending them diving for cover. He used the moment of confusion to start the tank's engine. The sudden, ground-shaking roar that tore through the night was monstrous. The men froze. Then, Elias hit the spotlight, bathing the clearing and the evidence box in a brilliant, unwavering beam. He stood silhouetted in the open hatch. "Thorn!" he yelled, his voice amplified by the acoustics of the surrounding forest. "You came for your property. Come and get it." Thorn stepped out from behind his men, his face a mask of fury in the harsh light. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Vance. I know you're the man who got my brother killed." Elias shot back, the words raw and jagged. "I know about Marcus." Thorn's composure finally broke. He snarled at his men. "Get the box. Kill him." The firefight was short and brutal. Elias ducked inside the turret, the incoming rounds pinging harmlessly off the thick armor. He used the tank's immense bulk for cover, returning fire sparingly, making every shot count. But he was one man against three. One of the thugs flanked him, finding an angle. As the man raised his rifle, a black and tan blur erupted from the tank's forward driver hatch, which Elias had left slightly ajar. Ranger launched himself through the air, 100 pounds of focused fury, hitting the gunman square in the chest. The man went down with a choked cry, his rifle clattering to the ground. In the chaos, Thorne made a desperate dash for the evidence box. Seeing his opening, Elias threw his entire weight against the turret's manual handcrank. With a groan of protesting metal, the huge cannon barrel swung around, faster than Thorne could have imagined. It didn't fire. It didn't need to. The multi-ton steel tube slammed into Thorne's side, pinning him violently against the solid trunk of an ancient oak tree. His scream was cut short as the air was crushed from his lungs. The fight was over. The flashing red and blue lights of the sheriff's department painted the trees in strobing colors. Thorne and his wounded men were taken into custody, their silence a testament to their shock and defeat. The evidence box, now in the hands of federal investigators, was a ticking bomb that would dismantle Thorne's empire of greed and deceit. The story of the veteran who caught a murderer with a World War II tank became a quiet local legend. The gold, it turned out, was exactly where Corporal Corrigan had said it would be, hidden in a false panel behind the ammunition racks. It was a fortune, but Elias knew it wasn't his. After months of legal wrangling, he used every last ounce of it to create the Marcus Vance Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing highly trained service dogs, free of charge, to veterans battling the invisible wounds of war. The farmhouse was no longer silent. It was filled with the sounds of purpose. The fully restored Sherman sat proudly in the clearing, not as a weapon, but as a monument, a memorial to Corporal James Corrigan, to Marcus, and to the man Elias had been. One cool evening he stood before it, one hand resting on the cool steel, the other stroking Ranger's head. He had found his peace, not by burying the past, but by facing it head-on, by using the very tools of war to build a legacy of healing. The rust was gone, both from the tank and from his soul. In the end, this was a story that proves the most powerful guidance can come from the most unexpected places. It shows that true strength isn't about the absence of scars, but about the courage to face what caused them. The unwavering loyalty of a dog named Ranger didn't just save Elias's life. It guided him back to it, proving that sometimes the path to redemption is paved with rust, oil, and the quiet determination to rebuild what was broken. What part of Elias and Ranger's story resonated with you the most? We would be honored to read your thoughts in the comments below. If their journey moved you, please consider liking this video and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of hope, healing, and the incredible bond between humans and animals. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.